Is now, according to the clerk, 10:01. And so I'm going to call the Board of County Commissioners CEO briefing to order for Tuesday, September 8th at 10:01. Let the record reflect that we have all commissioners present. And we're being joined this morning by Mike Burgess, who's going to tell us all things great and wonderful about the state legislature. Thanks, Mike, for your report. No, go ahead, Mike.
That's about right, Commissioner. You have it right. So I've talked to each individually over the last 3 weeks, mostly about capital budget. Talked to Jared and Jerry both and felt like we should probably get going on 2021. Try to get that nailed down, and I do feel some urgency on the capital budget projects to get those things nailed down. But first, want to just give you kind of a heads up of what I'm hearing. You're hearing the same stuff I'm hearing. You know, no special session until after the election. I do believe there will be one at that point. At that special session, though, it will just be all COVID related, so COVID budget updates. So I assume there'll be some additional dollars for public health potentially and some of those things. But I also think the state is waiting to see whatever the feds come up with in the next however long they're going to take to come up with it. I think I read they're back today. I mean, that's the extent of what I know of what they're going to be doing. So I think those are the realities of what they're waiting for. Other things in a special session would be around COVID privacy. So, you know, there's some of these apps out there. There's some legislators that are very interested in protecting people's personal data that's been collected through the tracing processes and some of those things. And I don't know how much that would interest you all and what kind of tracing and things like that the county's doing. But we'll keep an eye on that legislation. Also, I think in a special, there could be a chance for some police reform or social justice legislation to be introduced. I think the complexity of that would make it difficult to pass in a special session, which, by the way, will be all virtual. At least that's what we're being told right now. So I don't know how realistic, but whatever happens before January will be pretty limited in scope in terms of what will be offered and what will be discussed. Transition into January, I've heard different rumors about what the legislature may or may not do and what it might look like. But the one that seems to be gathering the most steam, and I've had a few folks that have talked to staff and verified that there is a thought process that they will go to Olympia for a couple weeks, change the rules and adjust to doing remote voting, and then send everybody home and try to conduct a session remotely. My personal belief is that's a long way off. I think there's a lot of stuff that's going to happen between now and then, so I'm not banking on any of that as yet. But the realities of that complicate things in terms of anything with any real complexity to try to pass, like I mentioned, the social justice issues or police reform, or the second notation there under general policy with the Growth Management Act and some of those things. Those things are pretty difficult things to pass if you're not allowed to caucus in person, and some of those deals. So I remain a little bit skeptical. But I want us to have our ducks in a row before that. I would envision us hopefully having a Zoom meeting, or if they want to come in, I don't know what your rules are, with your delegation by mid-October. Maybe that's problematic, maybe with elections. You all would be able to tell me better in that regard, but I'd like to get in front of them before a special session happens, because some of the budget cutting stuff could impact the counties for sure. So I'd at least like, in particular, Ormsby and Billig, not to discount the other party, but the reality of who's in charge right now, and the fact that if you do go all remote, I think it makes the minority party's ability to speak out even more difficult to do. Normally they can influence things through on the floor and in committees and things like that. I don't really know how that looks if everything's virtual. So that's kind of my thought process on a timeline and the reason to talk with you all today. I'll just keep going unless you have any questions specifically about other things I'm hearing about the mechanics of session or any of those types of things. Hearing none.
Any questions
Okay.
for Mike?
Yeah.
No, I just, Josh or Mary, do you have anything for Mike?
Nope.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. So just on the general policy front, I put the stuff, it's in no particular order. We've always maintained a line item on an agenda about county fiscal health. That's such a huge broad term, but you all know what that means. I think that there, and fill in some blanks, definitely about, what COVID has meant, what, your revenue returns look like, those types of things. Then the Growth Management Act, I was on a call yesterday that Paul Jewell from WASAC, or actually not yesterday, last week, sorry, that Paul has been participating in, and you'll remember the roadmap process that went on last year with the Growth Management Act. The legislature didn't end up really doing anything. You might remember that Senator Tacko put in a budget proviso that said he wanted to allocate $250,000 to further study and actually come up with some more concrete recommendations for what to do with the Growth Management Act. That budget proviso was vetoed by the governor, but apparently the group that Joe Tovar is a part of, they've raised money and they are going through some of this process. So they are looking to make some recommendations to the legislature. I think at this point, Paul with WASAC would tell you that what he's coming up with would not work for counties at this point. I also, again, because it's complex, I remain skeptical that something does happen, but there is a belief that the climate change element being put into the Growth Management Act is something that will happen. It's been close in the last few years. We've talked about it a bit, but I do think that that's one that we will have to deal with and have to have consideration of. So if we want to provide some parameters or some terms, not necessarily related to climate change element, but about the Growth Management Act and adjustments we'd like to see, we should do that. Okay. I put the broadband one on there. That's a new one for me. WASAC did a survey of its membership. I'm assuming you took it. And it jumped out at me because at the top of the list was indigent defense, county fiscal health, unfunded mandates, but broadband was up there pretty high. Broadband access, and obviously I think that's an offshoot of what everyone's doing now with all these Zoom meetings. I've not heard that from you all before, so I just made a note, wanted to check if increased broadband access is an issue for the county. If it's not, we'll just take it off and move on.
I think it's something we should leave on. We've had several of our local school districts approach us. I mean, at least share with us their concerns or difficulties they're having with broadband with the majority of our schools that are starting remotely over here in Spokane. So I think it's worth to at least keep on there and support what we can.
Fair enough.
I definitely think it's really important to have on there. I mean, we've got towns like Rockford that have no coverage at all. So it's like trying to figure out, that for some of these rural communities that, I don't know, they seem to have like a little dark zone for them. So I think it's really important to have on there. And we definitely, like Josh said, seeing it with the schools. I mean, almost every school district is asking for help with internet connectivity.
Okay. Now, the reason I have only those 3 items is, I mean, there's certainly others. You want to add to the list, please, let's do that. I just kind of wanted to do that as a conversation starter and cover the ones that I knew would be bigger topics and issues we'd want to talk about. And maybe it's too fresh today to come up with other general policy ideas. But we can, I think once this call's over, or the meeting's over, I'll summarize what I'm hearing from you all, and then get it to you, maybe try to talk to you each individually again, and then come up with a more organized list that you'd approve maybe in the next 3 to 4 weeks. So you don't have any today, just be thinking about them and let Jared or Jerry know.
Any other items for either Josh or Mary?
I think on the fairgrounds, I mean, has the valley approved that?
Oh, yeah, if you want to transition to capital budget now, Commissioner, which is great.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
Well, I had just a quick question, Mike, and I'm sure it'll probably become more apparent once once more school districts actually do start up and we see how the remote education goes. But is there any talk yet of large education initiatives or education legislation out there because of the COVID environment? Any changes to education being discussed?
Not that I know of, Commissioner. In terms of policy and legislation, I have talked to a few people that do work in the education world, and I think that they are quietly preparing themselves to be remote the entire year. Is the one I had heard, which I just saw your eyebrows go up, and believe me, mine do too, with the 2 boys I have at home. So we'll see. But in terms of actual legislation, I don't know of. I haven't seen anything or haven't heard anything. It isn't to say, of course, it isn't happening, but and keep in mind too, those conversations I'd had with folks that work in the education world, those are, they're anecdotal, they're in Zoom calls and whatnot, but I think there's a reality for it, maybe setting in.
Okay.
That's all I would have to add. But again, I don't know of any specific bills. So.
Okay.
So I've got a couple items, Mike.
Oh, excuse me. Sorry, Commissioner.
So I understand that the legislature is going to take the opportunity to use COVID as a reason to pass carbon tax. And so, that's going to be something that's going to have a big impact on us in terms of probably a negative impact, quite frankly, specifically for those in the 3rd legislative district, because this is going to be pretty burdensome for low-income families. So, that the indigent defense is one that I think we continue to hammer on. And I'm on that WASAC subcommittee on criminal justice reform.
Okay.
From what I understand, there's going to be some legislation proposed in that the committee is going to be taking a position on, either in opposition or in support of. So we'll provide you linkage to that activity.
Commissioner, I assume that criminal justice reform, I know that Aussie's association put out like guidelines, or I don't know if they actually drafted, I assume they have legislative language. I haven't seen it. Is the WASAC group working closely with the police and chiefs and the sheriffs?
They're starting to. Juliana is the one that's heading up that effort and stuff. So she's in that information gathering stage right now. So I would anticipate that we'll be working closely with the sheriff's group.
Okay, I made a note to put that down. When you mentioned carbon tax, you are correct that there will be, I would think that this year, carbon tax again is considered, but I think capital gains tax will have a very good chance of passing, more than it's had in the past, for any number of reasons. But I do think that will be on the table, and revenue increases will be on the table for sure. Transition into the budget, unless you have any other policy issues. I put the fairgrounds on. I've spoken to each of you about that proposal. I was approached by my colleague that works for the city of Spokane Valley, that is a project that they potentially had an interest in pursuing. And given that it's your fairgrounds, I thought we should talk about it a bit. Don't know what more information you all have heard or gathered since we just talked about it over the phone in a brief conversation. So wanted to throw that one out there. And of course, you're familiar with the other two projects that have gotten funding in past sessions. And is that something we want to ask, or do we have another capital budget request? And I do believe there will be a capital budget. I think that a lot of times capital budgets are viewed as job creation packages, and they're marketed that way by legislators. So I think it's really important, if we do have a good project and a big one that we want, we get working on it so our delegation knows about it. So that's, and again, these are not, if there's other ones, let's put them on.
So there's another project out at the airport for a hangar facility that I think that the county will probably want to be supportive of. So I might put that on the list.
Has your staff gotten better information from City of Spokane Valley about what they're asking?
The fairgrounds, I think Jerry has actually been working with them and actually has some site plans and some drawings of some options.
I sent out to the board at the end of July some renderings of what the valley is thinking is one of their options. They have not made any decisions yet. I think they had 3 projects that they were zeroing in on. One of them was on the fairgrounds, one was at Plants Ferry, and one was, I think, in conjunction with Central Valley to build a complex out by Liberty Lake. Both Doug Chase and I, they've been very gracious about inviting us when they're having their brainstorming sessions and stuff. But as of now, I'm not aware that they've made any decisions. And obviously, if they do want to pursue the fairgrounds, they will come to the board and, with a request. But the idea behind it, Mike, and your colleague probably told you that, is that there are some in the valley, not all, but some in the valley that think, if we're going to use this money, let's do something that might generate some sales tax. And this might be the spot to do it. And of course, we've got, literally millions of unfunded stuff that we probably should be doing with our fairgrounds to keep it up to snuff. So that's what we've been talking about, but no decisions made yet.
Okay. Do we just kind of want to loosely leave it on there until we know more information? Or?
Sure. Oh, if it's okay with the board.
Yeah.
Any objection to that? Doesn't
No.
seem like it. Okay.
And then do we have additional requests we want to make for the medical examiner or the center? Because I know that those projects are ongoing or could use additional dollars.
Well, any money that they could throw to the medical examiner just reduces the amount of money you have to go bond. So if they could kick out a couple, shillings for that, that'd be great.
Okay.
The other one that they might be interested in participating in is the small arms range. We're getting ready to go out to construction on that.
So would the state patrol use that?
Good. There's additional capacity in that to be contracted out to other law enforcement agencies throughout the state.
Where does the state patrol practice now?
I think they use the city's range down by the river.
Okay.
They may use the Border Patrol's range up north too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
The thing there, Mike, as you probably already know, for the ask, is that this is a county facility, the small arms range. If somebody pushes back and say, why would you guys, why would we give you any money when the Air Force is dishing out some money? This is our facility. They're just paying for part of the capital and the O&M to maintain it so they can use it, but it's a county facility.
Okay. Okay, I made the notes there.
Okay.
We'll probably want to narrow that down a bit when we get closer, but I'm glad that we have options there to talk about. On the transportation side, I think there is continued discussions with folks to try to do some sort of revenue package. I'm a little skeptical of that given the current environment, but I don't want us to be caught not ready to go. Beyond continued funding and making sure that the existing projects that are being worked on continue to receive their funding, are there new projects that are in the queue that we want to wholeheartedly support? I mean, such as an interchange somewhere or bridge, something along those lines? Or then, of course, you've got the grant programs from, you know, CRAB, FIMSIB, all those things that we've always supported those. But I'm more interested in, do we have a single, I don't know that a mega project's the right word, but something that we want to see funded?
Well, one of the projects that we've been struggling with BNSF is the Euclid Bridge replacement, and you know, that has a direct impact on the Sears School and Fairchild and stuff, as well as, you know, a lot of other residents out there in terms of emergency escape routes. So ultimately, it's the responsibility of Burlington, but Burlington has been dragging their feet and looking for money from other sources and stuff. So maybe this is an opportunity for us to partner with them to get that bridge built.
Okay.
Any other transportation projects, either for Josh or Mary?
Yeah, I think you know, obviously we got to continue to support the North-South corridor, just because we know that there's potential for some of those funds to go away or get adjusted. And then the Henry Road Bridge project out in Liberty Lake.
Where is that in the queue, or how much is it?
Well, I think there's the potential that it's supposed to have been funded, but they're in the design, I think, right now. But you know, when I talked to Gribner, he's like, you know, unless it's out for bid, right now they're concerned about any transportation projects that are not out to bid by election.
So, Commissioner, I guess I'm asking, it has gotten design money from the state before?
Yes, it's supposed to be, you know, funded, you know, but as Gribner's told me, it's like you just can't count on anything at this point in time.
Sure.
So
but this is not a brand new, this is in the queue. It's been being worked on. It just they haven't started pouring concrete yet.
Correct. This was, you know, was it 2 years ago you helped work with Liberty Lake?
Yeah, was this the one with Patton?
Yep.
Yeah, okay, I know what you're talking about. Okay, so that's, again, the worry of fund existing projects.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think just a strong message of protect what we've already received.
Okay, but beyond that, it doesn't sound like we've got anything big in the queue that we want to see moved up or start talking about.
What do you think about Bigelow Gulch? You know, we're in the final phases of trying to get that done. We've got a build grant application in, but if that doesn't get funded, we're going to be about $12.2 million short there. What do you think about adding that to the list?
Yeah, any funding for Bigelow, I think would be good. I mean, because that's not only safety concerns, but that's also improving a freight corridor. You know, there's multiple reasons why the Bigelow Forker and connecting to Sullivan is a benefit for really the whole region.
That's Valley, right?
It starts in the city of Spokane, and then cuts east across the prairie, and then does eventually connect with the valley. Yes.
So both the city of Spokane and the valley should like this.
And the school districts as well, because it impacts several schools on the east end of the line too.
Okay. I'll check with my colleagues there to see where that project is on their list, just for edification.
Yeah, Bigelow Gulch project is
Gotcha.
where you'll find it. So.
Okay. Well, I think this is a good place to start from. Like I said, I'd plan to summarize this, message it back to you, and then check in with you each individually and see if anything else has come to mind. And then maybe do another meeting like this in another month to just kind of finalize things, if that works for you all. And then at that point, we'd be into early October, and then we could reach out to our delegation and shoot for that end of October to talk with them and, you know, present an agenda to them, but more importantly, like I said, the pressing on getting behind capital budget projects, maybe a road project, those types of things.
Mike, are you hearing any conversation at all about an effort to kind of roll back some of the emergency authorities that the governor has as a result of COVID?
I have been a part of a few meetings or Zoom calls with prominent Democrats that are willing to take a look, but just political reality wise, I don't think anything happens with that now. I do think there'll be some discussion with it in session. The reality of, you know, who the majorities are, I don't see a lot changing right now. I think the minority party will have several ideas that they'd like to see, you know, more legislative involvement, but I don't know that anything will pass. I guess the answer is yes. I think there will be a lot of discussion. I just don't know the reality of anything passing.
Okay. Okay.
You know, and Mike, one of the things that you hit on about if a regular session is held virtually too, I mean that sort of pressure from the public as far as days on the Hill or demonstrations out on the Capitol steps, none of that is going to be seen by the legislators if they're all doing everything virtual. So I mean, sort of the impact and really being able to put a face to a lot of these of these issues or concerns from the community just won't be there. So I mean, it totally adds a different dynamic to a session.
I think too, and again, that's why any of these issues of complexity have interest groups on all sides, all angles, and those groups want to be heard. They have a right to be heard, and they want to be part of the process. But I just don't know how you have that full viewing of the process. For one, I think, you know, you make your best effort, you set up committee hearings, but as you know, it's not the same. It's just not the same as doing things in person. The other part too, I think, Commissioner, it's even bigger is, as you know, when you get a complex issue, not every legislator in a caucus knows a lot about water quality, whatever it is. They rely on 3 or 4 other legislators in that caucus to be the leaders on it.
Mm-hmm.
If they're not having in-person meetings in a caucus room, I think it's pretty hard to, you know, come to consensus on some of this really hard stuff. And, you know, some of the arm twisting and some of that stuff isn't going to happen.
Yeah.
And so I think a virtual session would completely reduce the volume of bills. You know, normally in a session in January, in the January session, starting in January, I would expect at least 2,000 bills to get introduced by the time we're done. In that scenario where we're virtual, I can't imagine any more than, well, you'll probably still get the same amount introduced, right? People introduce things all the time, but if a committee normally churns out 30 bills, I just don't see how you can do the volume. I mean, you all have been dealing with it. I assume your has been challenged as a result. So, well, not to say that. I think you commissioners can produce anything you want all the time. But it's just hard, the realities of it. So you make a good point. I don't know how they're going to do it.
Well, and if they're going to hold their hearings by virtual and Zoom, then, you know, it then challenges them to also open it up to the public, so we don't have to travel across the state. So that whole argument about, you know, you got to be in chamber to be able to testify, I mean, they're not going to be able to hold to that. So the hearings are going to drag out forever and a day too, because everybody and his brother can now testify.
You're 100% right, Commissioner, and that's why I think from the committee chair's standpoint, there's a definite limitation on how many bills they're hearing and things like that. Just mechanics that are going to grind it to a halt. But that's all speculation now. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, it'll be fascinating to see because the Senate, the Senate, as we all know, has done several virtual
Mhm.
hearings, but the House has been very, very hesitant to go to virtual testimony. So now that they have to, I mean, once we're through COVID, it'll be interesting, to see if they then try to go back to their old arguments about why remote testimony isn't good when they've been doing it.
Mhm.
So it'll be interesting that this could kind of force that issue for not only this session but future ones as well.
Yeah.
Okay, anything
Okay.
else for Mr. Burgess? Nope. All right. We look
All
forward
right.
to
Thank you,
this,
guys.
Mike.
Have a
Thank
good
you,
day.
Mike.
I'll be in touch. Jared, I'll touch base with you and Jerry, and we'll get this ironed out.
Sounds
All
good.
right, thanks, Mike.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, so our next item is Miss Carrie Griddle.
Actually, I think it's Jason. Jason Clark, is he on the line? Yep.
Okay,
Jason?
Jason.
Hi,
Hey
Jason.
there.
All right, Jason, you're on.
Oh, hey, and they're even slides. I love it.
And we don't know where they came from, but they look pretty good.
Well, I think Jared probably did a good job there. Well, let me dive in. You just followed up not too long ago and asked for the opportunity just to give a report out and say thanks for the support when we asked for some help doing emergency food relief. Yeah, perfect. This slide, yeah, you can go to the second one there. That's great. We are making some progress buying food, and just as a quick reminder, here's what we committed to. Generally the lion's share is for getting food to meet the rising food need, along with some related equipment for PPE for our agencies, packing materials, and then just transportation costs for moving this stuff around the community. And if we jump to the next slide, oh, well, there's a picture of a truck. You know what a truck looks like. Let's go to that slide. There we go. It's been interesting. The supply chain is still pretty complicated out there, but we are getting to where we can order food and it'll show up in 2 to 4 weeks instead of 12, which is good. And we've gotten a pretty decent amount of food in, and we have a lot more on order between now and mid-October. And the National Guard has been really critical. So I want to certainly put a shout out to the emergency, the EOC for their support on that front. And the National Guard have been we've ended up building a lot of emergency boxes, and we've been offering those out to community organizations all across the county. So local food pantries, meal programs. And then of course we're loading it on our vehicles and doing these mobile market events. A lot of those are really focused on schools, and as well as some targeted locations. And we're serving up to 200 families at those distribution events, and we have a lot more on the calendar. And if we jump to the next one, you can see an example of what is in these emergency food boxes. And, I think they're pretty good staple items. We're not finding everything we would like to because of availability issues. And in the background, you can see essentially the National Guard can build anywhere from 20 to 50 pallets of these a day if we need them to. And of course, we still have volunteers coming in to work on this as well. So it's a really wonderful complement to some of the perishable food that we're getting from mostly from the federal government right now, this Farm to Families program, which is pre-built boxes with perishables. So between these two programs, we've been able to make a dent lately. And then before I see what questions you have for me, I'll note that we're starting to see a bit of a surge in requests, and we anticipate this fall that's going to increase. And in particular, we're trying to work closely with the schools to make sure that we're reaching those families. We think there's going to be I think we're going to have some gaps there that we need to tackle around reaching kiddos and families they're going to struggle accessing the food they need. So is there anything, I just wanted to make sure we had an opportunity to update you and show that we're trying to make this go a long way, and what questions can I answer for you?
Any questions, Mary or Josh? Mary?
Yeah, thank you, Jason. So I think, Carrie had given you a call because I had gotten a call from somebody saying, hey, I think we're running out of food. And so I just wanted to, you came and talked to us. So you're not running out of food.
Yeah. No,
Oh, go ahead.
no, go ahead. You're good.
So
Well, actually,
anyway,
as Mary's asking her question, Jared, can you scroll up to, I think it was page 2 that just sort of had the statistics?
Gina's actually running it, but she'll do
Oh,
it.
okay, Gina. There we are. Thank you.
so anyway, and I think, we're happy to see the USDA that they allowed that waiver again for the fall. So that's good, but it's still, kind of how are we getting to the kids for the weekends? And are you seeing an increase there for the weekend packs?
Yeah, I would say we're seeing complications. We have a bunch of kids that we originally supplied during last school year, and this school year it's more a challenge of like, how do we get to those same kids? It's kind of a mixed, and then add in, we have a lot of new people that are showing up and saying they need help. And I think the schools are going to be really critical, because one of the things we're learning is, for a lot of especially recently unemployed families, they're not familiar with the food bank system, and or they're just not comfortable using it. And so we're finding that things like our mobile market events and the school distributions are actually where they're getting help. So I think that tells us that we're going to need to do more of that, which is a little more costly because it involves more transportation. And we need to package certain kinds of food for those distribution events. So I think it's going to be this mix of, how do we keep making sure that we're reaching those kids and keeping the food supply steady, so we can, I think a lot of it's still going to happen through the schools. And some schools are doing amazing things, like their teachers and their administrators are delivering door to door. And in others, we're inviting people to the schools to do pickups.
Okay, because I know, Central Valley, the Valley schools use different partners than you for some of that, but I think you probably provide some of the food to like Valley partners.
Yeah.
That then redistribute. And I know they've been, working hard over when they were doing it in the spring. I mean, they were actually delivering, they had volunteers delivering every Friday to those families.
Yeah, we've got kind of a mix of that too. And I've checked in with Cal recently, and they know if they need more product to let us know, but we certainly supply food their direction as well. I guess I also had are there any other questions about what we've been doing to date? I also wanted to ask for some feedback from all of you.
No, I think we're good.
I had one quick one. So you did say you're starting to see a surge in demand. Is it? I mean, I know when the phased approach first started and we went to phase 1, I think you were reporting that was one of the largest surges you've ever seen, correct?
Yeah.
Is the current surge equal or greater to that, or is it? I mean, has the surge peaked to that height?
No,
Or
right. No, great.
I'm sorry.
No,
What was
you're
that?
sorry, Commissioner. No, not yet.
Okay.
It's starting to come back.
Okay.
Yeah, not quite as dramatic as that. I think it's just kind of logical, as some of the benefits start to scale down from the federal government, that we're just going to see some of those families in food bank lines. And I think that will just continue to grow through the end of the year, is our expectation.
Okay.
Yeah, and just wanted to kind of throw out there as well. Carrie Gritdahl and I had spoken a little bit, and I've also been watching what WSDA has been doing. They had a chunk of CARES money that they were using to source food, and one of the things that we learned from that, they were trying to figure out how to get around the kind of the December 31 challenge. So they ended up partnering with some private businesses, and they've been buying food and warehousing it for future use for emergency relief. And I guess I was just curious if all of you have been hearing about community needs or gaps that Second Harvest could help with, and or if we see this increase in demand, would you be open to thinking about helping us purchase more food? And this community storehouse idea is something I've been thinking about. Our buildings are packed. I have no more capacity. So we'd have to partner with private business to store it somehow, but I just at least wanted to put that out there and see if you had initial reactions or things that you're hearing from the community that we could help with.
Mary, Josh, your reaction?
I'm not hearing of any gaps right now,
Yeah.
but that's not to say there aren't any gaps out there. It's just that hasn't been conveyed to me. But I mean, I think food security was one of my number one issues for the CARES dollars. And I mean, I'm just speaking for myself, but I mean, if you think that is needed, and that is something that the community, that we could see a gap if we don't make those purchases, that's something I would be open to exploring.
Okay.
Mary?
For me, I think the gap that I'm concerned about is that the meals for weekends for kids, that, they have meals during the week. It's those weekend meals that, different organizations have helped, worked with you to do that. And through District 81, I can't remember the name of that program through 81. But like I said, other schools have similar programs, not necessarily through you guys, but you're helping provide the food for those. And I think those are just essential for some of those families that, are used to getting, those kids are getting the meals that way versus the parents going to the food bank. So I'm just concerned as we hit fall and, what that's going to look like.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I'll think about that a bit.
Yeah, the only concerns I'm hearing are about, how to reach out to the kids that otherwise we're going to be getting their meals through the school, and if we're going to do remote teaching, how are they going to continue to get that food and stuff? And so if there's something that we could do to help assist that and stuff, I'd be open to looking at that. And if that involves some CARES dollars, then, so be it. I agree with Josh and Mary. Food security is one of our top priorities and stuff. So what do we have to do to make sure that we get that covered?
Okay. All right.
And Jason, so
Yep.
when you're saying, I guess I just want to clarify
Yeah.
what your thought is on food storage. So you're at max capacity now, you're saying, for food storage. So what are you looking for?
Yeah, I guess the thing I've been thinking about in the back of my mind is, if we did use some, if we were able to request some more CARES dollars, could we start ordering a bunch of food as soon as possible? And then we would try to partner with someone like Inland Empire Distribution Systems, or someone who does kind of food grades storage. And we'd start ordering as much of that as we could, because the lead times are anywhere from 4 weeks to 10 weeks to get this product in, and start storing it up. And then Second Harvest would draw it out of that warehouse as needed over the coming months to meet the need in the community, because we do expect it's gonna grow. And that could address some of that school thing, as well as just our regular pantry and our mobile market work.
Okay, I think I would be, okay with that, because again, I think getting that food, and I think once we hit winter, as you know, then you don't know what the conditions are going to be, and is our trucks going to get delivered or not. So I think I'd be happy to ensure that we've got, food available.
Okay.
Okay, anything else, Jason?
No, thanks for your time. Really appreciate the support. Thanks for all you're doing to work through these issues.
You bet.
Quick question, Jason. I mean, I'm no expert on food storage, but if it's primarily canned and boxed goods, if would an expo building at the fairgrounds be sufficient, or is there some sort of specialty temperatures in the room that has to be kept at? I mean, would one of our large buildings help with that, or would that not be sufficient?
I wouldn't say it'd be impossible. We'd have to make it food grade storage. safe, which would include, fairly robust pest control program and some other controls that we'd have to figure out, which is why it's, for us, most practical approach would be contracting with somebody who does that for a living.
Okay.
So not impossible, but it'd have some complications. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So I would just ask if you have a dollar amount in mind, let us know what it is.
Okay, we'll put some. I'll try to summarize and send it your way for consideration, and of course we can go back and forth as much as needed. So.
Okay. Very good. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Everybody take care.
Okay. So now we're Carrie.
I think we're at the schools.
We're at the schools now.
Right.
You just want me to talk.
We
today.
do.
I do. I'm so anxious to hear your wisdom. And
I
stuff.
doubt
So-
it. I seriously doubt it.
So,
Carrie always shows up with good news.
Yeah, that's me. The good news clean.
yeah. So you all should have a spreadsheet, the latest update on the requests from the school districts and stuff. So Carrie or Mary, who's going to lead through this?
Yeah, I'll lead. There's only a couple school districts that I did not hear from, East Valley being one of them. And quite frankly, I ran out of time to try to reach out. They were on 2 conference calls for the Wednesdays with the superintendents where I asked for them to give me information. So there's potentially that coming. I know Orchard Prairie, she sent me an email saying that she was going to put some dollar amounts together, and I did not receive anything as of yet. So that's kind of for East Valley. We haven't heard from. Great Northern, I have not heard from, but Great Northern's pretty small district as well as Orchard Prairie. But I do know Orchard Prairie is going to ask for something. Let's see. So we'll just go down the list. So Central Valley, that's the same ask that they had, a couple of weeks ago. Cheney is internet connectivity is really their big issue. Let's see, Deer Park. They asked for technical stuff. Since they're opening, they have to do these forms, COVID forms that have to be filled out each day. So they were projecting it was like $2,500 for these forms to be produced. And then they were looking at face shields, which was different than the normal PPE for masks and all of that. So that's what their ask is. Freeman is the 160,000. They kind of gave me numbers for a full year, and I'm like, Randy, can you, is that a full year amount? And so I've prorated it down because partly I'm assuming, Carrie, as you work out contracts with them, they're only going to be able to seek reimbursement for funds that are appropriate, correct?
Correct.
So you'll be doing like a contract, say, this is the maximum amount of this contract, and they'll be doing reimbursements.
Commissioner, I would be writing contracts for all the school districts or the schools that are on this and setting up budgets according to what the commissioners have approved.
Okay.
And we would probably put a budget together about what their requests are. And it's a cost reimbursement.
Okay, because I'm assuming that, since each one's kind of different, that we're gonna, as commissioners, we're gonna say, we're gonna approve such an amount, and then, it's allowable for these types of things, that then you'll be ensuring that they do.
And usually, Commissioner, what I've been doing is up to this amount, right?
Yeah.
So instead of just saying, yes, they have this amount, it's up to that. Because sometimes the things that they've gotten some kind of bidding on or some kind of idea end up being less. So we just do it up to that amount.
Okay. So let's see, so Liberty was, 8,000 for internet connectivity. Mead, so Mead, instead of funding teachers, as they talked about when they were here, this is actually their ask that a lot of it's technology related. And I apologize, I'm gonna try to get all the emails sent to everybody, but with my internet down yesterday, when I was trying to get all this stuff done.
You needed you needed some CARES money for technology.
So when I had a conversation with Sean, it was like, Are there other things we can fund? I wasn't particularly wanting to fund certified teachers, just because that's going to be something they have ongoing that they're going to need to be paying those costs for. So, so what they came up with was this other items, and I don't know exactly what they all were. I apologize. So
Did you say there's an email that lays out what the technology is?
yes.
Okay.
So, and then Medical Lake, they're primarily, they are asking for staffing, because they're not online, or they're online, but it's really for these groups that they're going to be having come in for kind of day camps, is my understanding on that. So that's, for paraprofessionals and that type. 9 Mile Falls, it was for technology, Chromebooks, hotspots, they need a minimum of 10. I actually put the 20 just because he was like, trying to be very cautious. And since we're doing up to, Root Edwald was the 111 that was last time. Riverside, they came in at technology, internet, all of those things for 50. Spokane, I think I was supposed to, that number should be reduced by a second. This is what you get when the commissioner is trying to do it all, right? I think their total was 563,200. So I apologize that that number didn't get changed. So this, instead of 6, oh, no, I guess.
Is that, Mary, is that because a portion of it's covered by the city's CARES dollars?
Yeah, so it was reduced by, so they had it as, 444,000 for day camps, 80,000 for learning centers, 39,200 for express child care scholarships, for a total of 563,200. And then they were asking for an additional 100,000 for cleaning, basically. So I guess that's what the 663. So that is the right number. But so that's why I have it includes 100,000 for substitute custodial staff, because they're, with having their day camps in the schools, they're doing more, they're going to need to do more cleaning. So they're asking for that. And then West Valley was the 310,000, which was technical supplies and all of, it did include some PPE and some food. Because there's some, with some of the smaller districts, they're worried that there's still going to be a gap between what USDA is paying for and not. So again, if we're allowing up to these amounts, then that gives Carrie the ability to say that that works or that doesn't work.
Commissioner, I also had a copy of what you sent me from me, I think it was, on the 543, so I did share it with the room.
Oh, good.
Right, it was the budget on the Excel spreadsheet. I got a copy
Yes.
of that this morning, so I made a copy, and Gina was kind enough to hand it out in the room here. So hopefully we can get it to Josh here in a second too, so he can see that.
And then I did talk to Cindy Wendell on PPE to figure out what's going to be the best way to get PPE supplies. So we're purchasing and getting it under our buying power and not having to contract with schools, because a lot of this doesn't include, the PPE. So she recommended, like they did for the small businesses, other than, to basically have a survey that the school districts fill out the survey to say, here's what they need, what they want, here's what we're willing to purchase. And then that gives us, give them a week to get that information in, so that way then Tony has the ability to purchase it. And then when it comes in, have a distribution, because I think we're seeing that it's harder for them to, they all have a little bit different needs. And so I think we need to figure out what Tony can get and the timing of that.
So Commissioner, are you talking about the PPE that's on the public school list?
Well, no, just on PPE for all the school districts, because most of them don't have, we're going to handle that separately. And you and I talked that you wanted prefer not to have it be under this contract, but you'd prefer it to be, I think that, and Al was talking about it, was we're purchasing as the county and they're coming and picking it up from us.
Right. Because there is PPE in some of this request too from the public school districts as well. So that's why I'm asking, just for clarification.
Yeah, some of it's, like I said, for District 81, it was for custodial staff, to substitutes that they're having come in to do extra cleaning. So it wasn't actual PPE supplies. She just had PPE. That's where one's so different. I think West Valley they just had a lump sum in there for PPE. So we check with them as to what exactly that was. Might find additional cleaning supplies.
Okay.
You know, some of them were more the face shields. What we never purchased face shields for anybody.
Okay.
When we did our pre-purchase. So I think that's where it's going to be, we figure out what the need really is for the districts.
Okay.
Do we know, do you remember, I mean, this was back when we were still meeting out at the fire training center, when Chandra said that the state was going to be sending, I want to say something like 300,000 face masks to be distributed to any family making less than 200% of the federal poverty level. Did that ever happen?
I haven't heard anything along those lines, commissioners, at all.
Okay. I mean, because it was months ago she mentioned that, and I don't know if it ever happened.
I haven't heard of any distribution here in Spokane with regards to that at all.
Yeah, I haven't either. So, okay.
And we did have, you know, several private schools, when I said that we'd be willing to purchase PPE for private schools, to have reached out. And again, that's why we've got to figure out what our system is going to be, so that way we can get this to them and get it taken care of as quickly as possible. And like I said, and Cindy, she felt that doing that survey, that we set that up, that would be the best way to do that.
And Commissioner, I think that would be a really good way of determining, because in looking at the emails, that wasn't really specific with regards to the private schools, but it might be helpful to know what the needs are out there in the private school arena about what it is specifically. So, you know, if we're going to do a distribution like we did for the business community, then you would need to know what you're going to need to purchase and how much. And that would give Tony and purchasing some sort of idea too, to come back to the commissioners and give them some kind of funding figures about what we're talking about. But we want to turn this around fairly quickly, correct?
Right. So that's what Meade sent me.
So would Cindy be willing to put something, or does she have something like that? Is that what you indicated that we could send out, or?
Yes, I think if she, she said it wouldn't take her very long at all to try to put that together, so we could.
So with regard to the request that we have in front of us now, are we comfortable going ahead and approving this and at least getting this into the process?
I am. I think it's, you know, you heard the superintendents last week talk that this is actually, you know, more expensive for them to be doing just learning. And I've actually heard, you know, some of them had older Chromebooks. I mean, it was interesting talking to some of the superintendents. Some of the smaller districts had older Chromebooks that aren't working with the new system. So they're having to purchase new Chromebooks. And I just want to make sure we don't have kids get further behind.
Josh, your thoughts?
I'm comfortable with this.
Okay.
I do I see, I think we have two of our attorneys in the room. So I guess I have a question, just because I don't want there to be any issues with this. I have a child that will be attending one of these school districts. Does that create any conflict of interest, or am I safe to vote on this?
My history has been that because it's for the general public and not for you specifically, you don't have a conflict.
Yeah, I agree with Commissioner French, Commissioner Kurtz.
Okay.
You're one of the, you know, thousands of students and parents within the Spokane County that
I know. I know. I don't want that. This is very important. What we're voting on here, and I don't want anything to be hung up by anything. So
yeah. And then I guess I just request that if East Valley, and Orchard Prairie and Great Northern get back to me, that we would look at that request as well.
can Gina, can you click back to the sheet that has the total dollar amount for all the districts? So Mary, just eyeballing these other numbers. If we did up to 2.6, do you think that would cover? Think that would cover when East Valley, Great Northern, and Orchard Prairie come in?
I would think so.
Okay.
Yeah, we can always come back and raise it if it's not, so, but at least we got some working room.
Yeah. Okay. I'll make a motion then for 2.6, just in case. So.
And knowing that room's there for them to kind of get in there.
Yep.
Perfect.
Okay.
Newport didn't put in because they're primarily Monterey County. The other ones are all that do share borders are primarily Spokane County. So
okay.
There you go. Thank you.
Hey, Josh, it's up to you.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve and authorize the expenditures of CARES dollars up to the amount of $2.6 million to cover the expenses as laid out in this spreadsheet and as presented by Commissioner CUNY, and to also accommodate the asks for the school districts who have yet to submit their requests, as long as they are CARES Act eligible.
I will second that.
Okay, I've got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Let the record reflect the motion passed unanimously. Thank you very much.
And then I just want to make sure that you guys are okay with me working with Cindy to move forward with doing a survey to the schools for PPE.
I'm fine.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. Thanks for taking that on.
Yep.
So as long as we're, just so Carrie, is there anything else outstanding from your standpoint for CARES? So
The only thing I was going to do is a presentation after you guys were done
on
what I sent you in your
Treasury guidelines.
Treasury guidelines. Okay. Let me introduce this other topic and then we'll come back to you because it might have a relationship to you.
Al, before you do that, do we know where we're at with the colleges? Jerry, were you able to reach out
I reached out
on
to
PPE?
Whitworth and Gonzaga, and they are preparing, I think they're preparing a request. I haven't heard anything from Eastern or Wazoo, and I didn't call Lars, which I need to call him today to get contacts to some of those other universities.
Okay, because I guess what I'm trying to figure out, do we want to handle them like we are the schools? They would be part of the survey to say, what are your needs? Or are we just going to do a separate?
Probably is not a bad idea to do them in the survey too.
Because then Carrie's not contracting with them. It's just, there's
Exactly.
I think Mary froze.
I think Mary froze up.
Josh. No, Josh.
Okay.
Mary,
Yeah.
Oh, Josh is moving.
Josh is fine.
Mary's the one that's having
Mary,
the problem.
you evidently you startled because you're not moving. We're not hearing you. You're froze.
Keep moving, Josh.
Even the ceiling fan's not rotating. Nothing's moving.
She just froze up is all.
Yeah.
She's been having internet problems.
It's all
Yeah.
the kids on Zoom today.
Yeah.
That's probably wiped out the capacity.
Yeah. Someone's sucking up all the bandwidth.
Now she's
All
gone.
right.
Okay.
She's gonna try and
Yeah,
dial back
she
in.
can call back in too.
So when she dials back in, what kind of Herculean task do we assign to her? There she is.
Oh God, you're really bad. She leaves
Well,
the room. There she is.
I know. We'll see if this, I don't know what's going on.
Well, in your absence, we gave you, no, that's all right. So I don't know whether you've been following the drama over on the other side of the river as it relates to rental assistance program. But
I thought you were going to say fluoride.
no,
Oh, don't did we lose her
I'm
again?
not going to fluoride.
I just turned my video off to see if that helps my internet stay better.
So the city rolled out their rental assistance program, and a couple of things that have occurred in the rollout. And it's interesting because you have both Terry Anderson with the Tenant Association and Steve Corker with the Landlord Association, both upset at what the city has done. And the two primary areas of concern is that in the city's rollout of their program, they said both the tenant and the landlord had to reside inside the city of Spokane, and they indicated that those requirements were coming from the feds, which nobody seems to be able to identify whether in fact it is a federal requirement or not. I highly doubt that it is, but stranger things have happened. The result is that, one, a lot of tenants don't know where their landlord lives, and so that becomes a challenge in terms of who's eligible. But the other suspicion is that the majority of the landlords for low-income housing, in particular here in Spokane, city of Spokane, probably don't live inside the city. And so there's a lot of confusion about how many folks are going to actually be able to take advantage of the program. The other element that is problematic is the rental assistance only offers 80% of the outstanding rent due, and then requires that the landlord forgive the other 20%, and that the landlord commits to not evict the tenant for a period of, I think, 6 months, might be longer, but it's at least 6 months after the rental assistance is granted for past rent, not future rent. So it's the response that the council president has given a number of folks is, well, when we get feedback on how the community responds to the initial guidelines, then the city council can come back and choose to, if they desire, change the guidelines and maybe make the program a little bit more expansive and or eliminate the requirement that the landlord lives inside the city of Spokane, especially since this is designed to benefit the tenants in terms of making sure that we don't have people being kicked out on the street when the moratorium finally ends. But in one of the conversations that council president had with a community member engaged in this conversation, his recommendation is go to the county and get 15 million out of the county, out of the CARES funding. And of course, this is a continued effort on behalf of the council president to try and direct how we're going to spend CARES money in the community. And of course, if we followed the example set by the council president, we'd only make that CARES funding available to folks, low-income housing in the unincorporated area of Spokane County. And obviously, that's probably not the ultimate goal, but it certainly would fall in line with the logic that he's using. So I raise this because we are hopeful that the state will grant the 5.9 million in housing assistance to the county that we can distribute throughout the county. And so we might want to start thinking about what is the method that we're going to use to be able to determine who is eligible and who is not. What are the parameters that we want to put around that, assuming that those parameters aren't already identified by the state? And then how much, if any, CARES funding do we want to parlay with the money that we'll get from the state? So I'm raising it now. There's no action to be taken now, but I want you to think about what would be your desire as we move forward with trying to provide rental assistance. Now, the CDBG funds, those parameters are already identified, and that's moving forward. This additional funding will probably require some kind of policy decision from the three of us in terms of deciding how and who and what conditions are associated with that funding. So just throw it out for conversation. No decision has to be made today, but I think it's something that we probably should start at least talking about. So there you go.
I think if you're talking about the 5.9 million from Commerce, I thought we were working on RFPs for different agencies to be the ones to handle that money, like SNAP, or there's a couple of different ones that Kathleen, when they came into us last week or 2 weeks ago, talked about that they were putting that request out for proposals for that.
So they will administer the program. What I'm talking about is the policies that relate to how they're going to administer it. For instance, if we follow the same kind of criteria the city of Spokane followed, where you had to be a resident of the city and the other parameters on that, well then, would we then say the only folks that would be eligible for that are those that are in the unincorporated area? Or those policy decisions, the nonprofits are not going to make the policy decisions. Those are decisions we're going to make.
Right. I was thinking that was already part of, but it was a criteria was already laid out in the grant for us to receive the grant. So I'd have to go back and look at that because it was.
That was my understanding too. I thought Kathleen had indicated the criteria was already determined. It had to do with how much of your rent, what percentage of your rent was of your overall income. You had to be at X percent of the poverty level. There were several guidelines I thought were laid out. I don't know if we can add or remove any of those. I don't know if we can make it more strict or if we can make it more lenient, but I think that I'm sure Kathleen would know on those, but
right.
But I know that there is some guidelines that are in place already.
Yeah, because partly remember when we were on the Law and Justice Council and I mentioned it, and then Carmen had made a comment about it because they were taking public comment for a little bit and then they closed that and then put out the grant. So I don't know that there's much that we get a change in that, but I could be mistaken. I think with our CARES dollars, we'd have more flexibility to make a policy decision, but I'm not sure if we can for that one.
Well, and to Commissioner French's point about how much, do we want to add additional funds? I still haven't found a reliable number out there on what is the need, because several months ago when I spoke with Steve Corker, I think his ask was $2 million, that would take them through the end of the year. But if we're getting nearly 6 from Commerce, that's 3 times what they thought the need would be a couple months ago. So it's like, what is the need? Will 6 cover it? Is 6 not enough? I don't know.
Yeah, and I challenged the folks in the industry to give us an exact number, or at least a reasonable wag at it and stuff. I said, right now, we don't have any data. And of course, remember the last time we had this conversation, we had people in the industry sending us emails and saying, wait a minute, we're not seeing anything close to the kind of waivers that and backfilling that was required in the initial request and stuff. So there's some work to be done on this to identify, one, the scope of the need, and then from our standpoint, what elements of policy do we want to apply to this or not? So again, not looking for a decision today, just looking to start a dialogue, because my suspicion is that this is probably going to land on our desk at some point, and I just don't want us to be caught without having the opportunity to talk about it before we have to react.
Correct. And the other need that I think we haven't addressed and hasn't been addressed yet is mortgage assistance. And again, I've tried to reach out to Catherine Morgan to see at US Bank or at Bank, I don't know, whichever bank she's at. I think, we've got to reach out to the banks to see what they're seeing as a need. And how do we determine that? Because, we're helping with rent assistance, but I think we're going to see a need for mortgage assistance, because then, as you know, Al, you talked about it before, from 2008, I mean, the last thing the banks want is to foreclose, and we don't want those people homeless. So, so I see that as that we need to figure out what the need is and help in that area.
Yeah, so the mortgage assistance side of it, as well as the rental assistance, are two different elements of the housing discussion and stuff. I can reach out to a couple of the bankers that I know in the industry and see if there's some kind of industry monitoring or information gathering point that we can rely on to shape the conversation. So I'll make those calls this week.
Okay, and then I know I'm having a conversation with Family Promise, and that's kind of, they've talked to me before about mortgage assistance that they're seeing, a need for it. So I'll talk to them as well.
Okay.
Was it mortgage assistance Family Promise talked to you about, or rental assistance?
They talked about both, but a lot is mortgage as well. So that's why it's kind of been on the forefront of my mind that it's not just rent, it's also mortgage. So people, are falling behind on their mortgage. How do we keep them in their house?
Okay, I was just going to say that when I spoke with them maybe a month and a half ago or so, it all centered around rent assistance.
Okay.
So.
Well, and the mortgage assistance is an interesting conversation, because are we just assisting if we decide to do it on the debt, or are we also talking about back taxes, property taxes, and insurance? Because those are all three elements of keeping people in their homes and stuff. So, and I don't know what other communities have done with regard to that, but to me, those are three separate conversations.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll start gathering some information. At some point, the city is going to have to resolve what they're going to do with the rental assistance program. And so we've probably got at least a week or two before that crashes, and they have to adjust. So.
Yeah. And then I talked to Shannon Berkey on Friday, when Kevin Cook was in, and we were talking about, extending the, no penalty and interest on late payments. And she said they're in pretty good shape, and that they're actually seeing people get caught up because they're not having to pay the penalties and interest since those have been waived, that they're getting caught up on their base bill, and that we're not really seeing, a big gap of people not paying their bills. So, which was interesting.
Yep. So Carrie's got an update for us.
Yippee!
Yippee!
Yippee! Well, I just wanted to provide you guys with some information to think about for future discussion. About 2 weeks ago, budget staff and my staff participated in a GFOA webinar, and they presented information about what prime recipients such as Spokane County getting direct dollars from Treasury are doing with their funding. And the three top areas that communities seem to support were the small business loans or / grants, PPE, and then the third was public, what they called public safety salaries and benefits, which was kind of shocking at the time because you would figure most of the public safety salaries and benefits were in an individual's budget at the end of March 27th. When we started looking into this, and the guidance that Treasury is now giving us is that they talk about that public health or safety employees are doing substantially different work than what they were doing prior to March 27th, in that they're addressing the COVID crisis. And the public health and safety staff include like our public health safety staff that you figure at the regional health district, sheriff's office, sheriff's deputies. They talk about detention service staff or any other staff that are substantially dedicated to addressing the COVID situation. And so what they think and what they started coming up with is some parameters, and a number of communities have also put together their reasoning behind that unless the chief executive officer or similar makes a determination that the public safety and public health staff are not substantially dedicating their time to COVID type of situations, you can charge 100% of the salaries from the end of March until the end of December.
Wow.
So I wanted you commissioners to be aware of this. That there was the best presentation made by a gentleman from Phoenix, who's the city kind of like budget officer down there, that talked about they moved a substantial amount of their CARES dollars over to cover their public health and safety employees down there, their salaries and benefits. Wow. So with your permission, I would like to follow up in contacting him to see just exactly what that entailed and gather more information to do and work with the budget office in order to be able to present this information to you guys at the near future here. I think you need to be aware of what the opportunities
very intriguing. Yeah. No, that'd be outstanding if we could actually do that.
And I had heard this that California had a couple of programs, so it's been brewing out there, and then Treasury kind of talks out of both sides. You know, some of this is a little bit confusing, but then what they were talking about, how they got it out of in the budget, is that your staff are doing substantial different work from that date forward. And then they give some kind of clarification that most of the staff they're presuming that are in these arenas are doing and addressing COVID things, for which it took it out of their substantial different services.
So are you hearing any conversation at all about extending the deadline from December 31 to sometime in the first or second quarter?
In fact, the presentation that we listened to 2 weeks ago from GFOA was indicating that almost all of these communities were going to spend all their dollars down. And the reason they were is because they're now hanging their hat on covering salaries and benefits with regards to this issue. Because it was shocking to me. I mean, and all of us were kind of like, what, you know?
Well, with that kind of interpretation with regard to salaries and stuff, that opens up quite a bit of at least recovery opportunity for the county. So, Mary, Josh, your thoughts?
So, Carrie and I have been talking about it. I'm still, I just need to get more information. But I'm hearing from NACO, it was like, I don't know, a month ago, that they were thinking that the deadline was going to get extended if Congress actually got back and passed anything. So I don't know, so I think that's going to be, if it doesn't and we need to spend some money, this would be a way to use that. Because I don't know, when NACO talked on a WASAC call, they were talking about, they weren't going to give any more money, but yet they would extend the deadline. So I don't know. It's just, as you know, everything's just so up in the air. I mean, it's just so hard for all of us. The city's just got additional funding last week. So like the city of Spokane's getting another 3.3 million. The Valley, I can't remember what, it's like over $1 million that they're getting. And I think their date to have it spent is now November 30th. So there's additional money coming into the region for all the cities and small cities and such, like it was the first go round.
Commissioner, I totally agree. I think I would just like to explore this information to have available for you three, to have that information as we get closer. And that's outside the realm of the things that you're planning on doing with the funding to help the community. It's just an option for you to, and I thought I had to bring it to you now, seeing since we're in the first part of September, so that you have this information available and for me to explore this further if you'd like me to do so.
Yeah, and no, I definitely would like you to explore it further. So, and to see kind of what numbers we'd be really talking about.
Correct.
And so you might want to also circle back with Amelia Clark over the health district, because I just had a conversation with her this morning about her trying to put together the 2021 budget. And if she can recapture some of the money that she spent this year, then it'll have a dramatic impact on her budget for next year and stuff. So yeah, that's an interesting opportunity. Josh, your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I mean, it certainly changes the playing field substantially. I mean, we didn't think any of this was possible, but no, I agree with everything you and Mary said. I think you said it all. So
Okay, go forth and do great things and bring back a lot of cash. Yeah.
Knock over some things on the way, or
Yeah, you bet.
one never knows.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to be able to present this to you guys early
No,
enough.
appreciate it.
And
Thank you.
to take a look at what the opportunities are for Spokane County in this regard.
Well, and it probably wouldn't be a bad idea for us to. I mean, we've spent now close to 35 million, 38 million, somewhere in that realm.
We're down to $58 million left.
Well, after what we did today,
So 52.
52.
Be about 55.
yeah,
right?
52, 53 million and stuff. It would be nice to be able to start to develop a chart that says, out of what we've got left, here's what we're allocating. Because we know we got money that we're going to allocate to the health district. We've got some other, if we do anything with housing or food, we've got that. We've talked about coming back with another round on the small business financial support grant program, and stuff. So just make sure that we hit that target of getting everything spent by year end and where we're going to spend it at. So,
And what Terry was talking about here could comprise a major material piece of
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
remaining CARES funds. And so knowing what that amount is and what's included for us in both the health district is going to be key to going forward, like you said, to say, what do we have left?
Well, and you could use it as a drawdown at the very end as well.
Yeah.
That's the other piece to this.
Mhm.
And then PPE is going to be another one that we'll probably spend several more millions of dollars.
Right. Yeah. So, okay, we want to line it up so that we run out of money when we run out of checks.
Exactly.
Exactly. Okay.
Just to confirm, we're down to what? How much CARES money left? Did you say, Gary?
Well, we dedicated 2.6 today. We were at about 58, 57. So you're looking at about 55.
Okay. Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, and keep in mind that we probably have another, 4 or 5 to the health district.
I would think so.
Yeah, to get them to the end of the year.
Yep.
That gets us into the high 4s, high 40 million kind of a deal if we've got, let's say 5 to the health district. So, I just want to make sure that, like I said, we run out of checks before, when we run out of money. Okay. Anything else for this morning? I think that's it for this morning, other than,
Jim wanted to.
oh, yes, Mr. Amacio, you have a fine opportunity here. So,
Thank you, Chairman French. Board members, I sent you this weekend a very short email. It has to do with the Board of County Commissioners' purchase of the 55 West Mission property. On August 25th, the board signed the purchase and sale agreement for the 55 West Mission property. At the time we signed the document, board members, I had discussion with the attorney representing the Spokane Housing Authority, and they were in agreement with the terms of the purchase and sale agreement. Subsequent to our signing the purchase and sale agreement, the Spokane Housing Authority has asked that the Board of County Commissioners consider an amendment to the already executed purchase and sale agreement. As you recall, in the original purchase and sale agreement, there was a funding contingency paragraph. The funding contingency paragraph provided that if the county, at its sole discretion, determined the CARES Act resources could not be used to purchase the 55 West Mission property by September 30th, that we could terminate the purchase and sale agreement and we would get back our $5,000 deposit. After looking at that language, the Spokane Housing Authority suggested, well, we may have liked it earlier on, but we're proposing an additional option. There's two options. Number one, the Board of County Commissioners authorized the chairperson to send a letter to the Housing Authority waiving the funding contingency that I just talked about. That is to say, we would purchase the property from whatever sources we wanted. It wouldn't be limited to CARES. And as you recall, under the purchase and sale agreement, we determined the value of the property by hiring a commercial appraiser. They hire a commercial appraiser, they average the costs, and that's the value. So option one is, Spokane Housing Authority is, please, county, consider just waiving the funding contingency. Option number two is in the document which I shared with you this weekend, and that's which the clerk has on the overhead screen. The option that Spokane Housing Authority is suggesting under this option is that the Board of County Commissioners and the Housing Authority that agree that if on September 30th, the county determines that we cannot use CARES funding, that within 5 business days, we meet with Spokane Housing Authority and the city of Spokane to determine if there's other funding sources that the county has available to purchase the property. And if the county determines at their sole option that there is no other funding authority, the agreement terminates and we get back our $5,000. In that instance, we have the ability to assign the agreement to the city of Spokane, and the amendment authorizes to assign it, and Spokane Housing Authority will agree. So I have, so there's 2 options available to the board. Number one, waive the present funding contingency, which basically says that we will purchase the property from whatever funding authority that we deem is appropriate. Or number 2, modify the present language that makes it clear that if we determine we cannot use CARES funding, we agree to meet with the Spokane Housing Authority in 5 business days, determine if there's any other funding source available at the county's sole discretion. If none, the agreement terminates, we get back our $5,000, and the agreement can be assigned to the city. Those are the 2 options, Commissioner French, and I don't have either one is appropriate. I think Terry's here. I'm glad she's here. I think staff's opinion is that we believe we can purchase the 55 West Mission property with CARES funding. We think because we're going to have a lease with the present operators of the homeless shelter there, which is required for the social distancing, we think we have a very good argument, if we were ever challenged, that it was a lawful purpose. And Carrie, is that a correct statement?
That's correct.
So the options are, just like I said, either one, Commissioner French, we can sign the present purchase and sale agreement. They can sign it. We can waive the funding contingency. Or number two, we can sign the first amendment as I've articulated it.
So what would be your pleasure?
I have no idea. What do you guys want to do?
Josh?
Well, if we go with the first option, we'd have to pull 1.3 million. Is it 1.3 we allocated for the purchase, or 1.7? I'm trying to remember.
I think it was 1.3.
What was that, Mary?
1.3.
1.3. So I mean, we'd have to pull 1.3 out of reserves. I mean, it comes down, are we comfortable committing ourselves to that today or not? I mean, I guess that's for me, that's what it comes down to. I mean, are we willing to let 1.3 million potentially go from our reserve account?
Commissioner, I would ask Carrie this question. I seriously doubt whether we'll get any further direction from the Department of the Treasury or potentially the Washington State Department of Commerce on the issue of the acquisition of real property with CARES money other than we already have by probably September 30th, which is the date which is presently in the purchase and sale agreement. Is that a correct statement, Carrie?
I would say yes. And I think that the primary issues, if we go back and review this, was whether or not U.S. Treasury had to be notified prior to you purchasing this property. It was never the question of whether it was a proper use of the facility because you were doing it within the time frame that it was for social distancing. It certainly met all of the guidance that had been provided by Treasury with regards to that. They got back to us and indicated that you did not have to notify the Department of Treasury. And then one of the only issues that remained on the table that Jim and I spoke about is if you turned this property into something substantially different in June after the time frame, would that require us to go back to U.S. Treasury and ask them, what do we do now? Because we've turned it in from a shelter to now we're turning it into transitional housing or something that's substantially different from what it was purchased and to address COVID. That question will not be answered prior to any time soon that I can see. We're not getting a lot and nothing's come out with regards to real property, but it's been very clear from what I've been able to read up on and what the auditor from the Washington State Auditor's Office gave us is that there's no restriction on you purchasing real property, nor is there a requirement that you go to U.S. Treasury and get permission to do it prior to you doing this. The question becomes when you flip it in June, what happens then? Or if it's next August or September, whenever the property would stop being used for a shelter.
So, Josh, your concern is the concern I have is, are we in a position to where we end up having to pull money out of our reserves? And if we had to pull money out of the reserves, is this the highest and best use of those funds? Based upon the conversation we just had earlier about being able to recapture some of our operating expenses from 2020 as it relates to COVID response, that might be another source of revenue if, in fact, we got challenged on buying the real estate. We might be able to absorb that 1.3 out of recapture of operational funds we've expended in 2020. So that might be, a plan B, if you will, fact, quite frankly, for me, would be Plan A after if we got rejected out of the COVID, and then if we couldn't do that, then I'd look at the reserves as the backup kind of a deal. So I'm a little less concerned. If we had not had the briefing that Carrie did about recapturing some of our operating costs, I'd go with the amendment that Jim has prepared. But knowing that we have some other options available to us, I guess I'm more comfortable saying, let's just go ahead and get this thing wrapped up.
Well, and I would say that, you know, transitional housing is still part of our homelessness plan.
Yes.
And I don't know that it's really, it's really going completely in a different direction than what the intent is. And just because it's not overnight emergency, it's still part of getting people out of that overnight emergency, keeping them socially distanced as we try to find them housing. And so I think we can make an argument that way too, that it's not like we're buying it for homelessness. Because we are buying it for homelessness, to help our system. And so I think we can make an argument that way, that it's not taking it, we're not suddenly buying it for homelessness and then we're going to use it for, office space. So I think, based on what you were just saying, Carrie, I think we can make the argument, and maybe we need to make sure that we're presenting it, that this is all part of our homelessness plan for social distancing. And this is just it's going to transition from overnight to transitional bridge housing, which is still part of the homeless structure.
Well, and Commissioner, I have to give you the worst case scenario, right?
Right.
And I mean, that would be the worst, but it wouldn't, also you would have to look at whether or not, if they found that, certainly they wouldn't require you to pay back the total 1.3 because you used it for that purpose for that period of time as well. So there's those factors in there, and I think you have a really good argument if it goes into transitional housing, that you're not turning it into something that, like you said, like an office space or something that's totally outside of what the use is for.
Right. And so I think we just want to make sure that we talk about that as we use it, that we purchased this to help with our homeless structure. I don't know what word to use, but, plan, and that it will continue to be, because even if it's bridge housing, it's still homeless. It's for homeless, individuals.
Well, first and foremost, you purchase it to allow social distancing due to the COVID. Exactly. And
right,
that's the specific reason, but it is within that time frame, and it really falls into the continuum of housing services that you can offer these people as well. So you may be even able to say transitional housing keeps people from accessing the shelters and putting the strain back onto that would create the social distancing issue as well. So I would make that argument as well when you start going into transitional housing and the purpose for that housing. So I think it all does dovetail in, and you could make that argument.
Yeah, it's all still a part of our, so the healthy homeless housing is a part of the COVID response. Correct. I mean, to this. So
I'd be in favor of just going ahead and waiving the financing condition, and let's just move forward with the purchase and get it done.
I agree.
All right.
Chairman French, may I ask one of the board members, just so I have a clear record, if they would make a motion that the chairperson can execute a letter prepared by legal counsel at other than an open meeting, wherein we waive the funding contingency, which is paragraph number 3.3 in the purchase and sale agreement signed by the board on August 25th, dealing with 55 West Mission Avenue.
I will make a motion to that fact as stated by Mr. Amacio.
I will second that.
Got a motion and a second to do what Jim said. So all in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Let the record reflect the motion passed unanimously.
Thank you, Chairman French. That's the only item I asked Mr. Gimmel to bring before the board.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
All right. Any miscellaneous items before lunch? Seeing none. It's 11:45 and wait a minute. Jerry's got a grin on his face.
No.
Okay,
No.
good.
Yeah, you gotta.
All right. All right.
Well, this is after
Actually-
2 o'clock.
Actually, I
Thanks,
do
Josh.
have one before Carrie leaves.
Gary?
I just wanted clarification on the consent agenda. Let me find it real quick. 4D, in the matter of executing an agreement between Spokane County and Pioneer Human Services in conjunction with CARES Act, coronavirus. Which one is that? With Pioneer.
That one is the actual, there was one with Pioneer, there's one with VOA, and then Catholic Charities for the social distancing for court. That
The
Maggie
court.
Yates, yeah, that
Yes.
Maggie Yates presented. Their Catholics doing 2 sites, one at New Haven and I think one at the shelter, and then Pioneers doing it at their facility, their inpatient facility, I think. And then there was one at VOA. So
Okay.
those were related to those facilities. They're small amount contracts, but CARES dollars are being used for that.
Okay, and so that's the one with the Spogo Taxi LLC as well. It was one of the criminal justice ones.
Right, and the taxi
Okay.
is related to the transportation that commissioners approved as well. Part of the
Okay.
overall package that Maggie presented to you.
Gotcha. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, if I could follow.
Yeah, and Jim Kaufman's got something for us.
Just to make sure, Carrie, that I understand you correctly, those sites at Catholic Charities and VOA only involve misdemeanor cases with district court, possibly municipal, not felonies, because Larry said you can't do that. Judge Clark was not ready to do that, as I understand.
No, that's my understanding. It's only district court.
Thank you. That was my-
Okay. Any other miscellaneous items?
I have a quick one.
All right, Jared.
There were 2 issues in the media over the weekend that the board probably heard about. One was that gentleman who was allegedly arrested by our sheriff's department for his political views. On that issue, Sheriff Knezevich will be having a press conference with the media here in 15 minutes. So I just wanted to make you aware of that. And the other one was about the minor who sustained a broken leg in custody at juvenile detention. The county was served with a lawsuit on that on Wednesday. We didn't make any comments to the media per our policy, but if you would like, Steve Bartell briefed me about that situation, but he also offered to join you for an executive session conference call if you were interested. But he is coming in next week already on another lawsuit. It's up to you. If you want a briefing on that last issue, I could give you the 30-second rundown, or we could invite Steve Bartell in.
Well, if any kind of briefing on legal matters, I'd have to go to executive session. So unless you've got a burning desire to hear about it this afternoon, how about if we include it as part of Bartell's briefing to us next Monday? Is that all right?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
That's fine. Yeah.
Okay, that's good. Very good. So just somebody let Steve know. And Mr. Gimmel, I know that you're just sitting on something there.
Nope.
You sure?
I have nothing. Can't wait till this afternoon.
Okay. So now it's 11:48 and seeing nobody come forward, we are adjourned until this afternoon at 2 o'clock. Thanks, everybody. Have a good lunch.